When we think of dolphins today, we picture intelligent, playful creatures leaping through waves and chattering in a language of clicks and whistles. They're among the smartest animals on Earth, capable of solving puzzles, forming tight-knit social groups, and even recognizing themselves in mirrors. In many ways, dolphins feel like the ocean's version of us, curious, clever, and full of personality. But beneath that friendly smile lies a wild and ancient story, one that didn't begin in the ocean at all. Surprisingly, dolphins are descended from land-dwelling mammals. Millions of years ago, their ancestors walked on 4 legs, breathed air, and had hooves. One of the earliest known relatives is Echolocation, a small, deer-like animal that lived about 50 million years ago. It probably spent much of its time wading in rivers or hiding in the shallows, and though it looked nothing like a dolphin, it shared an important trait, a specialized inner ear structure adapted for hearing underwater, a clue that it was already starting to make the leap into aquatic life. Over time, evolution took hold. Legs became flippers, nostrils shifted to the top of the head, bodies became sleek and streamlined. These creatures shed their ties to land and became masters of the sea, evolving into whales, dolphins, and porpoises we know today. But here's the twist: dolphins weren't always the gentle, social animals we admire now. Their ancient relatives were fierce predators. Some had long, interlocking teeth built for gripping slippery prey, and others hunted in coordinated packs, much like modern orcas. These prehistoric dolphins were fast, efficient, and brutally effective in the water. At their peak, they weren't just surviving alongside ancient sharks, they were competing with them. Back in the Oligocene, around 34 to 23 million years ago, the oceans weren't exactly the friendliest place to hang out. Killer whales weren't around yet, and while sharks like great whites were part of the picture, they weren't running the show. Instead, a whole lineup of prehistoric whales had taken over as the top predators. And one of the most terrifying of the bunch was a dolphin-shaped monster called Ankylorhiza ttarroo. Now, don't let the dolphin part fool you. Ankylorhiza, its name means fused roots, thanks to how its teeth were anchored, was nothing like the smiling, squeaky dolphins that we know today. This thing lived between 29 and 23 million years ago, and it was built like a torpedo with jaws. At nearly 5 meters or 16.4 feet long, it was the biggest toothed whale of its time, but size was just the beginning. What made Ankylorhiza truly scary was its arsenal. Its skull was thick and solid, packed with big, conical teeth that pointed forward like a mouth full of mini spears. These weren't delicate little fish snatchers, they were serious tools for tearing things apart. The front incisors? Huge. So huge, in fact, they probably stuck out even when its mouth was closed. And the teeth weren't smooth either. They had cutting edges on both sides, some with serrations. Basically, imagine a dolphin crossed with a saber-toothed cat, with the attitude of a killer whale. Ankylorhiza had reinforced bones at the front of its snout, and the places where its jaw muscles attached were massive, some of the biggest seen in early toothed whales. Translation: this animal had a bite that could do serious damage. And we've got the fossil evidence to back it up. Some Ankylorhiza skulls show broken teeth, signs that it was biting into hard stuff like bone. That's not the kind of damage you get from chomping on jellyfish. Modern orcas sometimes take down big prey by slamming into them or crushing their skulls, and it's likely Ankylorhiza was using a similar smash-and-grab approach. With the forward-facing teeth and reinforced skull, it could have been ramming prey or even scrapping with rivals. But here's the thing. It wasn't just a brute. Ankylorhiza was fast. Its spine had this cool combo of flexibility and stiffness. The midsection could bend a lot for strong, undulating swimming, while its tail end was stiff and muscular for maximum propulsion. Its vertebrae actually got bigger toward the tail, especially around the second caudal vertebra. exactly what you'd expect in a high-speed ocean hunter. Its limbs were a little weird too. They were kind of stuck between the old-school semi-aquatic whales and today's fully aquatic dolphins. The upper arm bone was shorter than in whales like Basilosaurus, but still longer than what you see in modern dolphins, and the fingers way longer than today's species. It was like evolution hadn't fully finished the upgrade yet. This animal still carried some ancient traits while moving toward a faster, more streamlined body built for open water. The first Ankylorhiza fossils were found all the way back in 1887 in South Carolina, but at the time, scientists had no clue what they were really looking at. They stuck it in a grab bag category called Squalodon, a now abandoned group for all sorts of early toothed whales. It wasn't until 2020 that paleontologist Robert Besnecker and his team finally gave this creature the attention it deserved. They realized the original skull, plus a couple of other fossils from the same area, were part of something new, and named it Ankylorhiza tiedemani, honoring the person who first donated the bones to science. From an evolutionary standpoint, Ankylorhiza is a pretty big deal. It's one of the best preserved early toothed whales we've found, and sits right at the crossroads between the older basilosaurids and the more advanced dolphins and sperm whales. It has features from both sides, making it a perfect missing link in whale evolution. Ankylorhiza wasn't using group hunting tactics or sonar to track prey like modern dolphins. It was a lone predator, running on pure muscle, speed, and bite force. If one swam past you, you wouldn't think, "Oh look, a dolphin." You'd think, "What the hell was that?" It was on the same level as today's orcas, or even a mako shark. Eventually, Ankylorhiza vanished, probably disappearing around the start of the Miocene. But the role it filled didn't go away. Other cetaceans stepped up, like Leviathan, the macroraptorial sperm whale that hunted like a giant torpedo, and eventually, the ancestors of today's orcas took the crown. Ktylochara is an extinct genus of toothed whale, odontocete, that lived during the early Oligocene epoch, around 33 to 28 million years ago. It was first described in 2014, based on a well-preserved skull found in South Carolina, USA. We don't have a complete skeleton of Ktylochara macae yet, but its skull gives us a pretty good clue about its size. Judging by this skull alone, and comparing it to modern dolphins, Ktylochara was probably about 3 to 3.5 meters long, or around 10 to 11 feet. Its skull was weird in two big ways: asymmetry and something called telescoping. Telescoping sounds fancy, but it's basically what happens when the bones of the skull slide over each other like the parts of a collapsible telescope. Modern toothed whales, like dolphins and sperm whales, all have this feature. It helps support the muscles and structures used in echolocation. What's wild is that Ktylochara, which lived over 30 million years ago, had one of the most telescoped skulls of any Oligocene toothed whale. And here's the twist. Ktylochara belonged to an extinct family called Xenorophidae, and most of its cousins didn't have telescoped skulls at all, so this level of cranial engineering must have evolved independently. That's a classic case of convergent evolution, where similar traits pop up in totally separate lineages. Even so, Ktylochara shared a few features with its xenoropid relatives, like air sinuses in the snout, expanded premaxillae that stretched over the eye sockets, and an unusual connection between its skull and inner ear. All of these likely played some role in sound production or hearing. Now let's talk about that wild asymmetry. Ktylochara had the most lopsided skull of any toothed whale from its era. The whole face twisted to the left, the air sinuses were uneven, and the sutures didn't even line up in the middle. Modern toothed whales also have asymmetric skulls, and that's tied to echolocation. It may help them produce or receive sound better, or maybe even gulp down bigger prey. We don't have its flippers or tail, so we can't say exactly how it swam, but by the time Ktylochara showed up, whales had already evolved flukes, flippers, and tucked away hind limbs, so it probably moved through the water like a dolphin. Echolocation gives us one of the earliest solid pieces of evidence for echolocation in whales. Modern odontocetes make these sonar-like sounds using phonic lips in their nasal passages, not their throats like most mammals. It's like squeezing air through a balloon to make it squeak, and Echolocation had all the right hardware for it. As for what it ate, probably fish. Its long, narrow snout and sharp, interlocking teeth were made for grabbing slippery prey and swallowing it whole. Unlike belugas or other suction feeders, Echolocation wasn't built for vacuuming up food. It was more of a snatch and gulp kind of predator. Not all dolphins swam through warm tropical waters. Some, like Arctic Had, chose a different path, one that led them into the cold, subarctic seas of ancient Alaska. In fact, it's the northernmost river dolphin ever found, and possibly the oldest crown-toothed whale we know of, swimming through chilly waters between 29 and 24 million years ago, during the Oligocene epoch. Arctic belonged to a now extinct group called Allodelphinidae, a family of ocean-going dolphins that shared the seas with other early whales and predators. Its modern-day cousin, the South Asian river dolphin, the only living member of the superfamily Platanistoidea. The story of Arctic begins with a skull, weathered and incomplete, discovered back in 1951 by a geologist named Donald Miller, who was mapping the rugged Yakataga district in southern Alaska. That skull sat in a drawer for 65 years, until paleontologists Alexandra Bursma and Nicholas Pinson finally gave it a name in 2016, Arctic Yakataga. Even though it's only known from that single skull, we've learned a lot. It measures 2.26 to 2.28 meters, around 7.5 feet long, a bit smaller than a bottlenose dolphin, but probably looked longer thanks to its extended beak and surprisingly long, flexible neck. That last part is especially strange. Most dolphins and whales have stiff necks with fused bones, but Arcticara's neck vertebrae were elongated and unfused, possibly giving it more mobility, maybe even the ability to snap sideways at prey. The skull reveals a mix of features that are both familiar and unexpected. It had over 25 teeth, all single-rooted and built for gripping slippery prey. The sutures on the beak were deeply grooved, and a sagittal crest ran along the top. Its nostrils pointed upward, surrounded by a flat, rectangular platform of bone. Strangely, it lacked some features typical of its relatives, like the maxillary crest and the large tympano-squamoisal recess that usually houses an air-filled sinus in other dolphins. Its skull was also surprisingly symmetrical, which is uncommon for modern toothed whales. Although it's called a river dolphin, there's little doubt that Arctic was a coastal predator. It likely hunted fish and squid near the surface, much like today's Dall's porpoise. Some paleontologists believe that these ancient platanistoids were eventually pushed out of the ocean by more advanced dolphins and porpoises, the delphinoids, and only then moved into rivers to survive. It's a fascinating theory, but we're still piecing together that part of the puzzle. The place where Arctic was found, the Pole Creek Formation, is packed with fossilized marine life, coiled nautiloids, spiraled gastropods, sturdy clams. It paints a vivid picture of the world this dolphin lived in, a dynamic marine ecosystem brimming with life. Around 25 million years ago, the seas near what's now New Zealand were bustling with some truly extraordinary creatures. Early baleen whales, massive sharks with teeth as big as your arm, and penguins the size of humans all roamed these waters. But among these ocean giants was a dolphin that didn't quite fit the usual mold. A dolphin with tusks that might have been used less for biting and more for thrashing. The story begins in 1998, when paleontologists found a nearly complete dolphin skull along the cliffs of Otago, New Zealand. The fossil was carefully collected and placed in the University of Otago's Geology Museum. tucked away, and largely forgotten. But in 2018, during her PhD research, Amber Costa came across the unusual skull. Upon examining it, she was completely puzzled by the strange set of teeth. At first glance, these teeth were nothing like what you'd expect from a modern dolphin. Instead of the usual sharp, cone-shaped teeth for catching fish, these were long, tusk-like, and stuck out horizontally from the snout. They didn't curve down like fangs, but spread out sideways, almost like blades. So it was pretty unclear what they were for. Curious to crack the mystery, Costa and her team took a closer look at the teeth using a scanning electron microscope. What they found was surprising. The tusks showed almost no wear at all. This was a big clue. It suggested that the dolphin probably didn't use its tusks to fight other dolphins, as some had originally thought. It also ruled out the idea that the dolphin was using its tusks to dig through the seafloor for food, since sand would have worn the teeth down quickly. But the tusks, they were almost perfectly intact. Instead, the team started to hypothesize that the dolphin might have used its tusks in a very different way, perhaps to stun or injure its prey. Looking for a similar animal in the modern world, the team turned to sawfish, which use their long, tooth-studded snouts to swipe at and stun their prey before swallowing it. It was a light bulb moment. Maybe this ancient dolphin swung its head back and forth, using its tusks to strike squid or other soft-bodied prey, stunning or impaling them before swallowing them whole. To support this theory, the team pointed out that the dolphin likely had a flexible neck. Its vertebrae were probably unfused, allowing for a wide range of head movement. This would have made it easier for the dolphin to swing its head side to side, in a way similar to how sawfish hunt. The tusk's strange orientation and lack of wear also made it clear that the dolphin wasn't a typical predator. Unlike other dolphins, whose teeth interlock to trap fish, these tusks were better suited for lateral movement, not for gripping or holding onto prey. Ultimately, the research into this oddball dolphin sheds light on the diverse hunting strategies of ancient sea creatures. The more we learn about these unusual animals, the clearer it becomes that the oceans of the past were full of evolutionary experiments, with creatures adapting in strange and fascinating ways. Think of standing on the edge of a massive prehistoric lake, deep in what's now the Peruvian Amazon. It's hot and humid, and stretching out in front of you is a maze of swamps, floodplains, and murky waters. But here's the wild part. Just below the surface swims a giant freshwater dolphin, nearly the size of a small car. This was Pebonista yacaruna, one of the biggest freshwater dolphins ever discovered. It lived about 16 million years ago and could grow up to 3.5 meters or 11.5 feet long. Unlike today's dolphins that rule the oceans, this one thrived in a massive wetland system called Pebas Proto-Amazonia, a watery world that once spread across Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia. Back then, the Amazon wasn't a dense rainforest. It was a vast inland sea full of giants. Everything was supersized: crocodilians, fish, and as it turns out, dolphins. The fossil that revealed this prehistoric giant was found in 2018 along the Rio Napo in northern Peru. What scientists uncovered was more than just a big skull. The dolphin had prominent facial crests, special bony structures that helped amplify sound for echolocation. That's basically a built-in sonar system, and in muddy, low-visibility waters, that was essential for hunting. It had a long, narrow snout packed with teeth, ideal for grabbing fish. Its closest living relatives are the river dolphins found in South Asia, and together they belong to an ancient group called Platanistoideae, which once thrived in oceans all over the world. But its reign didn't last forever. Around 10 million years ago, the landscape began to change. The Andes kept rising, the Pebas system drained, and modern rivers started forming. As the wetlands shrank and fish populations shifted, Pebonista yacaruna lost its food source and eventually vanished. Its extinction, though, opened the door for a new kind of river dolphin to take over. The ancestors, of today's pink dolphins in the Amazon. Let's rewind about 30 million years to the ancient seas that once covered parts of what's now South Carolina. In those waters swam a strange early dolphin, one that might hold clues to how modern whales and dolphins developed one of their coolest superpowers: echolocation. Today's dolphins and toothed whales don't have external ears. Instead, they navigate and hunt using sound, emitting rapid clicks and listening for the echoes bouncing back. It's a kind of biological sonar, letting them see with sound in dark and murky waters. But how did this incredible system evolve? Fossils from this ancient dolphin help piece the story together. Though it looked a lot like a modern dolphin on the outside, inside it was already starting to change. Its skull showed early signs of asymmetry, especially near the blowhole, a feature that helps modern species direct and focus sound when echolocating. Even more interesting, the snout of this dolphin was slightly twisted, and the fat-filled lower jaw, which receives incoming sound, was tilted. This unusual combo probably gave it excellent directional hearing, like a built-in sound compass. Think of how an owl can pinpoint a mouse in total darkness just by listening. This dolphin may have had a similar ability underwater. It likely wasn't capable of the high-frequency echolocation we see in living dolphins, but it was well on its way. These features suggest that early toothed whales were already experimenting with new ways to use sound for survival, changing their skulls, reshaping their hearing systems, and gradually developing more advanced sonar-like abilities. This ancient dolphin showed some of the strongest skull asymmetry ever seen in a whale or dolphin, past or present. And while that twisted snout design didn't stick around in modern species, it marks a fascinating evolutionary path, one that shows nature trying different solutions before landing on the ones we see today. In short, this long-extinct dolphin may not have had perfect sonar, but it was a major evolutionary milestone. It was part of the slow but incredible journey toward the sound-driven world that whales and dolphins dominate today.